So after the way we ended last time, I particularly wanted to pay attention to changes in Nina after what seemed like an acceptance of joining the band, and how things developed between her and Subaru, looking for more possible metaphors like the light. The light does show up, in a sense, as in the early scenes she is back to using just the lamp. Whether that's a conscious or subconscious rejection of Subaru, I don't know, or simply a byproduct of working late into the night and wanting something softer and warmer. Sadly, we don't get another look into Nina's apartment after she and Subaru seem to come to terms, so maybe next episode we'll get a second look at Nina's place and see if anything's changed, see if she's actually using the lamp. Of course, that doesn't mean that we are done with meaningful motifs, because this episode does something with food instead. When Nina and Subaru meet for the first time, Subaru immediately asks her if she's eaten, and we get to the sequence with the meat buns. Like the lamp before, these are something that Subaru has brought as a gift. Momoka goes right for the party foul and pouring sauce over the whole lot, but we'll actually come back to that. Nina will try a meat bun, Subaru will ask if it's good, she agrees that it is, and they'll have a little nervous laughter. Okay, so Nina has joined the group, but clearly the two of them have not made much progress since last episode. Momoka just sort of observes this, but makes no comment, before pivoting into talking about the reason for the get-together, a little brainstorming about their first song, and that also we'll come back to. When Nina leaves, Subaru will pursue her, leaving her phone in the process, which we might interpret as how much she wanted the opportunity to talk to her alone. But it's not much different than the interaction over the meat buns. Subaru volunteers that she could never come up with lyrics, presumably her volunteering a way in which Nina outstrips her. But still, nervous laughter, and a transparent attempt to ditch her by inventing a trip to the convenience store. When Nina brings Subaru's phone to her, again, the first thing she asks her is about food, if they could grab a bite after this. Just like the convenience store, Nina asks off. And the difference between these two interactions and the one with the meat buns is that Momoka is not around. And so, Subaru simply forces the awkwardness out in the open. Should she just quit the band? There are other bands, after all, and Nina, realizing that Subaru is misinterpreting her behavior, joins her for the meal anyway. It's one thing for her and Subaru to remain strangers, but wrecking the band, and especially negatively affecting Momoka's return to music, it's enough to push her to do something that she would rather not. This meal, then, is sort of a critical juncture for them. As it happens, we're not so different, you and I. Despite Nina's own conviction that she made the right choice, it turns out she's somewhat embarrassed at being a high school dropout. She's momentarily taken aback to learn that Momoka shared that information with Subaru. Momoka is a dropout as well, so Nina has no inferiority complex there, but she assumes that Subaru is succeeding in the traditional way. Nina is very self-conscious about her status, which came out a little last episode when explaining to Momoka why she had to get into university. If she remains just a high school dropout, then she is done for. She views her situation that way, and thus assumes other people would as well. So, it's not only the way she feels inferior to Subaru as she perceives her, but that she also presumes Subaru would be looking down on her. And of course, that's a kind of accusation, and Subaru understandably gets upset in turn. Something really telling in their shouting match is how Nina draws a delineation between their situations. The fact that acting school doesn't give a diploma isn't the part that Nina cares about. Instead, she believes that Subaru is chasing a dream to do so, and that makes all the difference between them, that she has something she can say proudly. Nina is painfully aware that she does not have a dream. It came up in the premiere, after all, as Momoka naturally assumed that she came to the city for such a reason. So now there's Momoka with her clear driving goal of forming a band to make music, to say nothing of the success that she's already had, and Subaru, who is her age and seems to have two goals, while Nina is over here struggling to do the thing that she technically came here for, while knowing it's just the lesser of two evils. Thus, the reveal that Subaru is not an aspiring actress, and in fact has been railroaded into it by a family member is, well, a whole new world. She also hates herself for going along with it. The people around her just assume she is pursuing the family business, not that she herself is chasing a dream like Nina believed. Nina has found a fellow outsider, someone else who feels like they were living a lie. So then, the third meal, a return to the beef bowl place from the premiere. This time, Subaru and Nina do not nervously laugh, but actually kind of have a go at each other. Subaru feeling comfortable enough to poke fun at Nina's hoarse voice, and Nina willing to give her both barrels of the Pinky Bird. A far cry from nervous laughter. The beef bowl place was also where Momoka and Nina first had a real conversation, where she explains her situation and being locked out, asks Momoka to sign the canceled ticket, and it's also where she first mentions the precepts. Like I said last time, Nina's moments of revealing her past happened around meals, and that part of the family rules seems especially to stick out in her mind. Eating with other people is triggering, it seems, which is all the more reason to pay attention to the 3 instances in this episode. So let's do that. I think it's interesting to note certain details. First, the seating arrangements. With the meat buns, all 3 are facing in different directions, and the conversation about the song involves all 3 of them being on different pages, with Subaru expecting it to be done, Momoka wanting to brainstorm with the others, and Nina checking out to play with the cat. Momoka even says she's having a hard time picturing what fits the 3 of them best. In the second meal, Subaru and Nina are directly facing one another, opposing directions, and their conversation is adversarial, even to the degree of committing social faux pas by standing and yelling in public. But in the last one, after their first real practice session, and after Subaru and Nina have better understood one another, all 3 are facing the same direction. Their banter is playful ribbing rather than actual confrontation. They seem like a unified group. And, as such, the worker asks them if they are a trio, and receives a little card inviting her to check them out. Now, since I haven't seen this before, the face masks actually were adequate enough disguises for me to miss that these are almost certainly the other 2 girls we see in the credits. We'll come back to them. I only wanted to point out that it's a unified version of these 3 that makes the impression on them. And in terms of seating arrangements, right now, Momoka and Nina and Subaru are on one side of the counter, and those 2 are on the other. Another detail is the food choices. The first is the plate of meat buns, the same thing for everyone, but then Momoka dumps sauce over the whole lot to the protests of the others. It had the veneer of unity, just as Nina joining the band gives that veneer, but the reality is that they are not aligned, and some injections of personality or sauce cause conflicts. Ultimately, the meat buns go mostly uneaten. In the second meal, the adversarial one, the 2 of them get completely different items, a burger and a dog, but both are shoved into the same basket, which pretty aptly describes the situation Nina thinks she's in. But at the final meal, all of them get the same thing, with tiny personalizations. No onions for Subaru, and a beer for Momoka. They are on the same page, but are not a monolith. And interestingly enough, all 3 meals are gifts. Subaru bringing the meat buns and offering to treat Nina, while Momoka treats them for the beef bowls. Finally, I'd also note what comes immediately after each of the shared meals. The meat bun meal is sort of confused, and Momoka's question is about what kind of song makes sense for them. And so Nina shares what she has managed on the little music composition app. For a moment, they are all listening to the same thing, and though Nina is nervous to have the others hear, the reception is positive. Too positive, actually, which leads to the correct accusation that she has spent far too much time on it. The thing I want to point out, though, is that Nina's effort in trying her hand at music, her enthusiasm for it, is what the conversation after the first meal is about. After the second meal, when Subaru is explaining about her actor grandmother, she pivots into talking about her own motivations for being in a band. In a sense, it's her way of rebelling. First by joining a band club to avoid the drama club, and now by joining actual bands in secret. This might also explain the choice of a drummer, since drummers are sort of famously the most wild or disreputable members of any given band. And then, after the last meal, as Momoka heads off to work, she stops a moment to look at a billboard. And Subaru will explain that she's looking at an ad for her former group, Diamond Dust, who seem to have a new member replacing Momoka. It's the second time that episode that she stops to look meaningfully at her former group's picture. And so, given that the first two meals were followed by peeks into the motivation of Nina and Subaru, we might conjecture that Momoka is partially motivated by her former group, though I'm not sure we can guess why just yet. Possibly she is competitive, or possibly she is using her new band as a chance to do things differently than she had before. That is, she may not be trying to replicate her path with Diamond Dust, but to actively steer away from it. If it is the latter, then it's worth looking closely at the first instance, which is actually interwoven with Nina and Subaru's meal. We cut away from them in the diner to see Momoka handing out tissues, which I guess is her part-time job. As we do so, Subaru is explaining why she keeps hounding Nina. She says bandmates tend to be close since they have to come together to make one thing. When there's a difference in opinions, you can't just ignore it. If you try to gloss it over, there's bound to be a misunderstanding. And then, returning to the diner, she tells Nina she should speak up if there's something she doesn't like. This is what Subaru is worried about, that Nina doesn't like her but won't say anything, and she thinks that's a problem for anyone in a band. It's a far more fundamental problem for Nina, actually, but cutting away to Momoka looking at her former group, we should assume that her words apply to Diamond Dust, that it was they who had the differences in opinion that weren't properly voiced, leading to misunderstanding and, ultimately, Momoka's exit. Considering how she herself described being in a band last episode, the talking behind each other's backs, keeping things inside until they built into explosion, I feel like this must be pretty near the mark. I think then that Momoka has been pretty attuned to her recruited members and how they get on with one another. I'm partially inclined to believe that she dumped the sauce on the meat buns just to give them something to agree on, though she's certainly assertive and devil-may-care enough to have done it just because she likes pushing them into new experiences. Either way, when Subaru suddenly decides to leave and chase after Nina, Momoka will let slip a little knowing smile once they have both left, correctly deducing that Subaru is going to try to connect with Nina again. When Subaru leaves her phone behind, Momoka makes Nina be the one to return it, finally guilting her by reminding her of the gifted meat buns. However, Subaru says she would have come to get it if they'd called the school. I have to think this trip wasn't strictly necessary, but Momoka got what I think she was aiming for. When next they are all together, Momoka has made a decision. They should do a street show. In fact, she's just gone ahead and reserved a spot for the weekend. I'm amused how appropriate it is that Momoka has a cracked-up phone screen, and how the other two have the same reaction, sitting on the same couch, another reinforcement of their heart-to-heart having changed the dynamic. The street show is a surprise, as the other two thought they were going to make a song and a video first. They'll still do that, but Momoka says she feels a live show is the right call for this particular trio, and she grins conspiratorially as she says so. Evidently, they sent the picture of the two of them in front of Hachiko to them, and Momoka says they were oozing with misery and discontent. Well, neither of them much like that comment, but Momoka replies that it's exactly why she reached out to the two of them. This little exchange is why I lean towards Momoka having done the sauce thing on purpose, because it's similar to what she's doing here. She makes herself the enemy that the other two need to gang up on, the common foe that unites. Saying that their misery is what made her reach out to them is also unifying, and it jives with her belief about what a band is, a group of people who have a lot of stuff they want to say. See, the real hurdle for Momoka's new band isn't practice, or talent, or marketing, or any of that. The two main things that need addressing are the dynamic between her two recruits and Nina's personal turmoil. I said last time that I counted Nina's inner state as a conflict, and one that Momoka seemed motivated to address, and this episode seems to bear that out. Momoka helps assist Subaru's attempts at befriending Nina, and that feels like it's in a workable state. To address the other hurdle, then, Momoka will challenge Nina personally at several points. The first is after Nina shares her song composition, and Momoka correctly guesses that she spent a lot of time on it, This is just another reminder to her that she is doing this instead of studying, and she starts to take her leave, but they have a conversation in the entryway first. At first, Nina tries to blame Momoka for introducing her to the app, but she won't accept fault, and Nina agrees, because she is still, at heart, a mess of contradictions. Momoka offers to delete the app, but Nina doesn't want that either, so Momoka demands to know which it is. Amusingly, Nina will speak as though she's continuing the argument, but is really just saying what she needs to do aloud, before taking back her phone and leaving in truth. The key part to this encounter, I think, is how Momoka chases after her, refusing to let her just flee the conflict between what she wants to do and what she is supposed to do. The next time she challenges her is when she coerces her into taking the phone to Subaru, which we've already discussed, and so that brings us back to the street show. And just like with the app, Nina tries to walk out of the conflict entirely, once she realizes that a street show involves a live audience. And likewise, Momoka pursues her, challenging her over her instinct to flee. She reminds her that she already sang in front of people at the train station, but Nina says that it isn't that easy. She doesn't have experience. So Momoka says instead not to worry. If worst comes to worst, she'll do something. But Nina uses that to suggest that Momoka just be the one to sing in the first place. Then Momoka will make a personal appeal that she wants to hear Nina sing, and she'll understand why if she does so. And when Nina still is unmoved and starts to leave, she'll ask if she's quitting the band. Though Nina says she is at first, Momoka is completely unworried, even stops Subaru from pursuing her, and sure enough, Nina returns. And so, to recap, Momoka tackles Nina's hesitancy by reminding her of a past success, then by trying to allay her fears, then by a personal appeal, and then with a threat. For someone like Nina, whose inner life is so chaotic, it seems the best tack is to match her with your own chaos. And when Nina does return, Momoka hits her with some biting insight. That she's scared, and that whether she succeeds or fails, she's going to regret it either way because that's who she is. And since she's that way, she might as well go out and sing how she really feels. Momoka will challenge her to put her anger into her singing because it's the truth about what's inside. That sets the trap, as Subaru will put it, when they rent a little advanced karaoke box to have a practice session. Somehow Nina still wants to run away. I mean, what did she think they were doing here? And Momoka will say something I think is rather important. It happens during this neat point-of-view shot where the camera is inside the TS jack, framing Momoka in a circle, effectively a spotlight. She tells Nina not to be scared. It's practice. It's going to suck. And after the jack is plugged in, we shift to just Nina, and Momoka will continue. We're gonna fail. This really is the advantage Momoka has and the barrier that Nina is crashing up against. Nina is afraid of failing, afraid of losing, even walking right up to the edge of trying this new thing she's excited about. She still wants to bail out because it's the only way to avoid falling short. Momoka, though, has failed before, has failed a lot. It holds no terror for her. I want to go back to an earlier scene for a moment, the one where we see her at work. She passes out tissues, ads, basically, and is ignored by the people she attempts to interact with. Realistically, she is probably ignored by an overwhelming majority of people. She is failing, in a way, over and over again every time she's at work. And yet, her expression after each instance of being ignored isn't defeated, it's a smile. A closed-eye smile instead of the one that she presents to each potential customer, but a smile all the same. A little reset after each failed attempt. We know well that Momoka failed to keep her original group together, almost gave up music entirely, and there were, no doubt, many practices along the way that sucked, like this one is about to suck. But she has long since stopped being affected by such little setbacks. But you only get to that point by failing a lot. The only way out is through, and the best thing she can do for Nina is to get her to start failing. She still eases her into it, having her just sing scales and then bringing the instrument in alongside. And once again, we get a nice bit of visual creativity to help illustrate the subjective delight of their experience. Nina has goosebumps, a real phenomenon known as frisson, of which music is a common trigger. The trap is sprung, as it were, Subaru suggesting that once Nina has felt this, she can never give it up. It's enough to get her to the day of their street show, but a barrier still remains, and Momoka is again prepared to challenge her. Nina shows up in her same default outfit, is being the same person instead of changing, basically. Momoka chastises her a bit, saying she told her to bare her heart, and has prepared a little something as backup. A horrifying ensemble, really, and if she wasn't already embarrassed about singing in front of others, surely she'd be mortified to go dressed like this. But Momoka will explain, to her and everybody, that she thought it was better if it was an outfit she hated. Certainly, Nina will make sure she picks her own stage outfit next time, but it also heightens her emotional state. Momoka wants her to express what she really feels, to put all that anger and angst into her voice, all that self-contradiction. But rather than these being drawbacks or insults, Momoka tells her that that's rock and roll. Nobody knows who you are, and nobody will wait for you, but that's what makes it interesting. Momoka challenges her to understand, and seems confident that she will. And since no one can resist a good light and shadow metaphor, we get a physical threshold for Nina to step over to match the inner one she is crossing to run out on stage. What I really like here, too, is those tension lines that are always streaming out of Nina when she's in a heightened state. They don't recede, they are practically boiling as she answers the call. She isn't going to just hold the tension in her until it abates, but is taking it with her into the performance. Exactly what Momoka has been wanting her to do. Just like in the premiere, we get another performance that increasingly becomes more abstract and symbolic in its visual presentation, matching Nina's own immersion into her role, the world inside the song. Some of it is simply imagining the performance as a real concert with timed lighting and effects, but increasingly it ceases to be grounded in reality. The three band members each get a primary color to represent them, with literal paint strokes of color traced out around them in the air. And then comes a point where the only color at all is on the stage, with the crowd and surrounding area converted to black and white, and the actual individual audience members turned into clones of Nina in her outfit. The lyrics over that part even say, "There are so many people to take my place. You can't just tell me to be myself." A great cloud of confetti begins falling as well, but not just any confetti. We'll return to that in just a moment. When we get to the final line of the song, the color will reverse. Nina, Subaru, and Momoka are the ones in black and white, and the audience receives their color. The song lyrics in general seem to be about Nina in her current state, wanting to change but having no one to do it for her, her pain not disappearing even if she blames someone else, praying to stop cowering but not believing in God, and so on. Someone who wants help but is also shouting for others to shut up, to leave her alone. Yes, definitely Nina. Then there is a part that goes, "A stranger sings until they lose their voice, telling me that I'm not alone. I'm sure that to some people, those words are enough." Well, we just had Nina sing until she lost her voice this episode, but here the one who loses their voice is named a stranger. But I think that's still Nina. It's rather that the Nina who is trying to encourage herself, to get her to believe in the idea that she doesn't have to be alone, that one is the stranger, the voice in Nina's head that she can't bring herself to trust. I think perhaps that is what the Nina clones in the audience are all about. That even though Nina is singing to an audience in a literal sense, she is singing to herself in reality, trying to believe in her own message. If that's near the mark, then the transfer of color suggests to me that she is beginning to accept the idea, that she receives the message of the song. Since it ends with her exulting in the experience, I think we can count it as a success. Just as we ended last time with the light coming on in her room, and she gives in to joining the band, we end this one with her bathed in warm light, face upturned like she's basking in it. And since each episode has had parallels between the first and last scenes so far, we can count on having a new set for episode 3. Really, anime originals have no excuse when it comes to using their openings and closings effectively, being designed from inception as 22-minute chapters of an episodic story. This time it begins with Nina playing with the songwriting app, which she is doing to the exclusion of her studies. And although she fusses at herself and tries to focus back on what she considers her most important task, she repeatedly strays back to making the music. She'll even imagine several versions of herself forming a band and playing each role for the piece that she's writing. Now, we know Momoka added at least part of Nina's song to the one they practiced, so here at the end, she is getting to perform at least some of what she wrote with the app. Rather than a band of Nina's, it's an actual band, and we get a crowd of Nina's instead. We also get that special confetti. They're irregularly shaped, and every once in a while you can catch a glimpse of what they really are. Worksheets or homework or something from the cram school that have been ripped into small pieces. In the opening scene, and for a lot of the episode, studying is her main goal, and this music stuff keeps getting in the way. But at the end, the schoolwork is ripped up and serves only as an accessory to the musical performance. The order of her goals has changed. There's even one last little stray bit of paper in that shot where she's beaming at the sky to help emphasize the swap. Since we're talking about goals anyway, let's shift to that section. As I just said, it appears that the order of Nina's goals has changed. This is just as significant to a plot as the addition or completion of a goal because of how it affects a character's priorities. I don't know what that portends for her long term, but considering that Nina's problems are largely internal, it might be an important positive change. Her family might not agree, though. Momoka seems to have completed her in-episode goals of getting Nina on that stage and coaxing her and Subaru into a better place. We still don't know if she has any macro goals for the band. And Subaru basically is in a rebellious phase and just wants to bang drums however or wherever for now. In conflicts, I imagine that Nina's internal strife is not suddenly solved, but it clearly motivated Momoka now, and I imagine will continue to earn her attention. If Nina has indeed accepted the message of the song, then maybe she will be more cooperative with Momoka's challenges. It's possible that Nina being too distracted by the music to handle cram school could be a conflict. I confess I don't know enough about what she's doing to know what to look for. If it's a simple pass-fail on college entrance exams, like at the end of it all, then it may not be worth trying to track. We also don't yet know what Momoka's meaningful glances at the new Diamond Dust poster will do for the story, so there's nothing to add there yet either. In characterization, this episode really goes hand in hand with the last one when it comes to Nina, a part 1 and part 2 of what she needed to experience to ever step on that stage. I think I'd like to note, she does struggle a bit with embarrassment on top of other issues. We talked about being self-conscious over dropping out, but there is also the segment where she's taking the picture of Hachiko, and passing girls make a comment about her being a country bumpkin. And so when Subaru suggests they take a selfie there, she protests, using their words, but Subaru not only doesn't care, the accusation is true. An interesting straightforwardness from the girl living a lie in acting school, but nevertheless good advice to Nina, and an echo to what Momoka says repeatedly. Speaking of Momoka, I do like that we get a return of her mischievous side this time, with the sauce and the empty threat of the band, the surprise street show, the outrageous outfit. I like how she slowly turns up the heat on Nina over these last 2 episodes and never seems deterred or worried. Hard to believe she almost quit, seeing the way she is now. For Subaru, last time I wondered whether being an actor or being a drummer would more inform her personality, and now it's not even something to ask. A drummer is part of the rhythm section of a band. They keep time in order to ensure everyone stays in sync. And Subaru's behavior this episode is precisely that. She tries to keep them all moving to the same beat. The gift of the meat buns, the determined pursuit of Nina, the way she explains about bandmates needing to be close, and the way she either expresses solidarity with Nina or with Momoka, depending on what seems to better serve the overall interest of the group. She doesn't try to write music, or make plans, or lead anything, really, is content to just be the background supporting role. Drummer it is. And though we don't have names for them yet, we've had 2 little encounters with the workers at the beef bowl place. When Nina flips them off, the shorter one is ready for a fight, while the taller one holds her back and maintains her pleasantness. And this time, the same tall one will suggest giving our trio their own card, while the shorter one suggests they do so only after checking them out first. It's brief, but we can tell they have different and perhaps complementary personalities, with the taller one the more social and optimistic type, and the shorter more confrontational and cautious. If they indeed come check out their street show, then maybe an introduction will be in order soon. For world building, we add Subaru's situation to the mix, and she suddenly makes a lot more sense to us. Whether her grandmother being famous will matter to the story, I don't know, but we can keep it in mind all the same, like maybe she has connections. There's the 2 beef bowl girls with their own group as well. Since Momoka's band only has a placeholder name for now, perhaps a merger is in store, where we can alight on something more permanent that isn't one group or the other keeping their name in place. We should also note that the Song app enables Nina to do a lot of songwriting on her own, so even without any music education, she will likely contribute to the group's original work and the kinds of things they sing about. We also learned what Momoka's part-time job is, a thankless task that I am not surprised she was able to reacquire. In theme, aimlessness shows up again, and I wonder if it will be the last time. In this instance, it was Nina trying to navigate her way to the acting school. It was a task she didn't really want to carry out, a goal she didn't really want to complete, and so, appropriately, she took the circuitous and longer path to get there. That nicely reflects her own struggle to study this time, not only distracted by the music app, but staying up too late and functioning poorly during the day. The cram school just isn't a motivating goal for Nina. It's just something she has to do, like the errand with Subaru's phone. We also return to that individualized relationship to music, the personal things that go in and are taken out of a piece. In this case, Nina gets to do both with their end performance, serving either as motivation or actual lyricist for some of it, but is also one of the intended recipients of its message. We get a doubling, in fact, as both the speaker in the song and Nina on the stage are unsure whether they want to accept or reject the words, though perhaps by the end it is resolved for Nina. It'll be neat if we get anyone else talking about the song's impact next episode. And while it's probably too soon to assume that this will be a recurring idea, I do want to pay attention to that idea of failing, of being willing to fail to get anywhere. It was stark, the difference between Nina and Momoka this time, and I guess I wonder if anyone else will get in on the act. Certainly if we ever explore what happened between Momoka and the rest of Diamond Dust, we might at least get another perspective on this idea, considering how close Momoka was to hanging it up, and how easily she has bounced back again. Alright, that is well enough for now. I'll see you next week.